So with regards to the current, controversy between the governments of Venezuela and the United States, it is important to understand the background in unpacking this ongoing controversy that has, effects on the global oil markets. First off, it is important to note that everything we've seen has its build-up since the 70s, when the country of Venezuela nationalized its oil and gas industry. And by doing so, by virtue of that policy, a lot of major oil companies were practically kicked out of the country. And it affected companies like Shell, like Exxon, and the rest of them. Fast forward to the 2000s under Hugo Chavez, the late Hugo Chavez, whom of course handed over to whom Maduro took over after his demise. He also went on to kick out the U.S. companies, basically, because he initiated a policy that companies like Exxon and ConocoPhillips couldn't abide by, and that kind of affected the relationship. So Exxon moved out, ConocoPhillips, I think Chevron stayed back. So all this was the build-up to the animosity, if you may, between the United States and Venezuela. Then again, you look at the angle of China and, of course, Russia, whom, as you know, there are currently just three major world powers now, with the United States being the dominant superpower in the world. We also have China, which is a superpower, dominant power actually, and Russia. So when you look at it from that angle, the United States is not very comfortable with the ongoing partnership and relationship, between Venezuela and his adversaries, if you may, China and Russia. So, especially when Venezuela is just next door here in the Western Hemisphere. So this is what really, if you may, inflamed the current situation we are witnessing today. Now, if we narrow it to the global oil and gas industry, Venezuela is currently holding the world's largest proven oil reserve. In fact, 17% of world proven oil reserve is in Venezuela. 17% of global oil reserve. Unfortunately, due to infrastructural decay, decades of sanctions, and all the issues they've had, economic issues, the infrastructure, the oil industry infrastructure in Venezuela has not enabled that country to be able to produce to its capacity, right? And right now, Venezuela is doing below 1 million barrels. So it has 17% of world oil reserve, but it's doing about 1% of global output. So it's about between 850, 900,000 barrels a day. This is very low, very low. And if you look at it, you will understand that, for a country of 30 million people, that is sole economic mainstay of its economy, it's crude oil. You will know that is really a problem. And when it's faced with sanctions, it is very, very difficult to, make that production, because of the sanctions. To increase production becomes difficult, to even export becomes difficult. And that is why at the last check, I think the People's Republic of China I think imports about 80% of Venezuela's oil production. Now, when you look at all this, China is the main customer buying Venezuelan crude, even while the country is under heavy sanctions. Now, on the other hand, the United States companies have been kicked out, and there have been litigations about, assets and all that was confiscated or that was seized from these U.S. companies, especially Exxon and ConocoPhillips. So when you look at that, the United States based its own reason on that aggression, that you kicked out the U.S. company, you fail to compensate them. They've lost, the US companies have lost a lot of investment, and they did not recoup their investment in that country. And that is where this whole animosity started building up to the point we've seen. And only yesterday, the president of the United States just announced that they've reached an agreement with the current administration in Venezuela to ship to be shipping crude oil products, thousands of barrels, millions of barrels of product to the United States. This was announced by the president himself yesterday. So when you look at all of this, then you will understand that oil is actually at the base of this whole controversy. Now, Venezuela, being an OPEC member, is expected to also have some influence, when it comes to global oil market. And this controversy is expected in some quarters to probably affect global oil price. However, the current production capacity of Venezuela has made it very difficult for it to, impact the global oil market, negatively, because it is just about 800,000 barrels a day. OPEC members can easily, manage that. And the statement coming from OPEC, or if you may, the body language from OPEC has been that of neutrality. OPEC has been silent on the whole situation, choosing to observe, and because at the end of the day, tempers are very, very high at the moment, and a lot of people are, airing opinion. And a company or an organization like OPEC would want to be careful because of the volatility of oil market or oil prices globally. Now, what OPEC has done is to say, look, we will stabilize the market while this controversy is ongoing. We will stabilize the market, and we will make sure that there's no oversupply into the market. So the market will not be oversupplied, because again, if you look at it currently, oil prices are at about $60, right? We're doing about $60 a barrel. Now, if this controversy goes further to affect oil prices, to drop oil prices, or maybe if there's an oversupply of crude oil to the market and the prices drop, so it will no longer be cost effective for any American oil company to even go into Venezuela, because let's face it, Venezuela has faced over 2 decades of infrastructural decay. 2 decades of infrastructural decay. In those 2 decades, we've seen a huge drop in their production capacity, right, from about 3-point-something million to about 850,000 barrels. That is a huge gap. Now, to build back this infrastructure to the capacity where Venezuela can actually produce like a major oil country that it is, will take years, if not decades. So it's not something that can be done in 2-3 years. We're talking about massive oil infrastructure that have really gone bad. So if things are not managed properly, that is where OPEC is coming from now. If things are not managed properly, prices of crude oil will either tank or it will skyrocket. And if that happens, of course, because based on the volatility, if that happens, it will be difficult for even Venezuela to benefit, with regards to the crude oil from their country. Now, there's another angle to this, which is, of course, the midterm elections coming up in the United States this year. Mr. President Donald Trump is, fighting to ensure that the Republicans retain the Congress, at the later end of this year after the midterm elections. And part of the strategy from a few industry watchers is to see the possibility of dropping crude oil prices, right? And that is part of what this is about. If the country is flooded with crude oil from around the world, wherever it's coming from. America is still about the largest producer of crude oil, but of course they don't joke with their strategic reserve. So strategic reserve is of key importance in the United States. And if the whole country is flooded with products, there is a high possibility that gas prices across the country would will come down. And if that happens into the midterm elections, the possibility of voters tilting towards the Republican Party at the polls is very high. So there is an element of politics in local politics to this. And of course, there's the element of the geopolitics and the global economic issues. Another point I will try to conclude with is that it is important for major oil-producing countries in Africa, especially countries like Nigeria, like Angola, to look at this opportunity and drill, baby drill, like the Trump administration is saying, would also be the way to go. If we can, ramp up production and increase our production capacity, we can use this opportunity to chase new markets. That is what the world is saying now. China used to buy 80% of Venezuelan oil. Now, that is not going to be. Someone needs to fill that vacuum for China. So that is where countries like Nigeria, countries like Angola comes in. If we have the capacity to fill that vacuum for China, we should be reaching out at this time. That is part and parcel of the quick wins for countries like Nigeria. And it's a good thing that OPEC is doing this effort, is doing everything it could to stabilize the market, because that is also important, because we don't want to see a price drop. When the price drops below a particular level, then it is no longer cost effective for companies to move in their equipments for the purpose of, production, exploration and production. Now, Nigeria should also understand that this issue of oil, it's also an issue of national security. So oil is a national security asset all over the world, at least oil and steel. So if any country that gets those two right, would have less national security issues to contend with. So what is happening with our strategic reserve in Nigeria? Do we have a strategic reserve? If we do, what is the capacity? Are we thinking of increasing the capacity of our strategic reserve because our population is increasing, right? Strategic reserve, we need to consider it. We need to also ramp up production to meet our OPEC quota and surpass it if we can. Drill, baby, drill. That's the name of the game all over the world right now. So we need to get on board and do what others are doing. With regards to the market, there are new frontiers opening up. This crisis would, of course, open up China to the market. What are we doing about it? Are we reaching out? Are we strategizing to see that market is captured? Because, of course, some country is going to capture that market. Are we playing in that regard? If we can take care of our strategic reserve, take care of our local consumption capacity, then we definitely can take care of our supply obligations and even open new frontiers and new marketing frontiers and ensure that we are able to supply and have more funds to develop infrastructure back home in Nigeria. So in all, this crisis has different phases. There's the geopolitical phase, there's the economic side, and of course, it has the major economic angle is the oil industry, because Venezuela, as I said earlier, is the world's or holds the world's largest proven reserve of crude oil. For whatever it's worth, other African countries producing oil like Nigeria has a lot to learn, have a lot to understand, and have a lot to benefit from the ongoing crisis. And it will just be, it will be good to see how the government strategically positions itself to benefit economically, that is, from this ongoing situation.